Ladies, gentlemen, and vault hunters of all ages, we all love Legendaries. They're one of the most enjoyable parts of a new Borderlands game, and while I am absolutely happy to see all of the fun new weapon combinations that we can get, even with purple weapons that can make for some really strong setups, there's still just no combination of modifiers on a purple weapon that feels quite the same as the absurdity of some of these orange items. And while some of them are becoming quite infamous in the early days of Borderlands 4 for being broken in one way or another, there are plenty of Legendaries that you might not even know about, and a good number of the ones that people aren't talking about are still genuinely very strong bits of equipment. So today we're going to focus a bit more on the more obscure Legendaries, the ones that I don't see people talking about much, and most of these will be weapons that I believe do have at least niche high power potential, if not just really powerful potential in general with the right build. And a couple just slightly more fun ones as well, just because, you know, what are we here for if not to enjoy the silliness of orange equipment? And of course I'll also talk about how to get each one of these things too. That said, let's start off today with Katagawa's Revenge. I don't expect this one to stay quiet for very long, especially because the weapon literally talks to you. It is Katagawa from Borderlands 3, but I haven't heard many people talking about this weapon. I think because people just haven't quite realized what it was capable of, but the truth is the correct setup with this thing absolutely slaughters enemies, bosses, little guys, everything. It does not matter. The weapon is quite funky in how it works. When its bullets hit a target, it will create some storm clouds in the air around the area. If you are on incendiary mode, these clouds will just fall to the ground and explode for a bit of damage. And because this is the default mode, I imagine most people who got this weapon picked it up, shot it in that default mode, didn't like what it did too much, and then moved on. But the real trick of this is shock mode. The shock mode storm clouds, instead of just falling and exploding, instead become essentially auto-aim lightning turrets. They target the closest enemy to them and then just zap them super quickly and consistently. And an extra fun thing that this can do is it can spawn the Jakobs ricochet crit accessory on the weapon too if you get lucky, and if you ricochet the weapon's actual bullet, it creates a second set of storm clouds each time that you fire. The main thing that this can do to become genuinely powerful is just stack it with anything that scales off a pure fire rate like Neutron Capture Harlow or Curse Vex, and this can be unbelievably strong. As for how to get it, it is a dedicated drop from Driller Hole, who is the boss over here in this little sort of fortress area, who you first have to fight as part of the Unpaid Tab story mission. Next up we have another extremely underrated one, Saba's Songbird. This weapon is currently believed to be bugged, but it is a source of essentially infinite damage. It reads, deals 100% bonus damage for 5 seconds after swapping weapons, but it is a touch more specific, a touch more complicated, and a lot more broken than that implies. What is actually happening then is the buff will only apply after you fire a shot. You can't just put the weapon off and on and then shoot and have the buff. You do have to shoot with it, then you change off of it and put it back on again. But the part it doesn't mention is that this stacks infinitely, and these stacks don't get removed unless you enter one of the areas that has its own separated map, like the vaults or the big story boss fortresses. Anywhere that is in the open world, even through fast travel, even through dying, your stacks will stay. So it starts around 3,000 damage per shot for me personally, but you can see as I do the loop of shoot, swap back and forth, and just repeat that over and over, my damage from a singular shot keeps going up by 100% of the original value. And this does not have a cap. There is no limit. It's clearly a bug, but it is currently technically capable of being the strongest weapon in Borderlands 4 if you are patient enough to get it there, which is a crazy thing to say. As for how to get this, it is a dedicated drop from Rock'n'Rolla, who is a particularly special boss found in the Auger Mine right here in the north side of the Carcadia Burns region. Then we have an old classic returning once more, TK's Wave, which, while not completely mind-blowing, is definitely a strong general use weapon that I am just not hearing people talk about much right now. This is one of the more simple legendary effects to explain. You can tell it's been in the series for ages in comparison to how just complex some of the modern legendaries are. To start off with, it's just a big high damage shotgun. Really high damage split between 10 pellets per shot. Each pellet is a bouncing projectile that moves in a sort of wave-like pattern through the air, so if you shoot it from a distance, you're unlikely to hit more than 1 or 2 pellets on an enemy, but if you shoot it right up in the enemy's face, you will blast them for a ton of damage. And the real fun part is because it's also a Jakobs, you will ricochet all 10 projectiles right at another enemy if you crit them. And because of how this works, any missed projectiles could always hit the enemy on the rebound from the wall because, again, they bounce. It is just a really nice, solid shotgun. As for how to get it, this one again comes from the same place as our previous entry, the Rock and Rolla boss located in the Auger Mine on the north side of Carcadia Burns. Next up we have the Anarchy legendary TDR shotgun. This gains 15% damage on auto reload or kill, but loses 15% accuracy each time that it gets this stacking buff, and this goes up to 20 maximum stacks. These stacks reset if you reload manually. This means that you can get up to 300% bonus damage at the cost of a hefty accuracy penalty, and I can definitely see a world where this thing just pops off in some very specific niche setup that keeps it at maximum stacks consistently, which would be quite fun to see if it works. As for how to get this, if you want to try to be the person who works all that out, it is a dedicated drop from Radix, the boss of the vault in Carcadia Burns. After that then, let's talk about something that I know can get absurd, which is the Ohm I Got legendary Maliwan SMG. This thing has heavily gone under the radar. It is understandable why as well. The main effect is that it drains energy shields to increase the damage it does and avoid spending ammo when this happens. And on the surface, the first time you see that, you might think that sounds dangerous, but the trick is that overshields do not drain from the bullets fired. So all it really takes is a shield with the siphon modifier that gives you a chance for overshield gained when damaging enemies, and then some fire rate synergies, and you get a weapon that basically has infinite ammo while also getting its own damage boosted as well. As for where to get this one, the least spoilery way of saying it is that it is a dedicated drop from the Ripper Queen fight, but not the first one, the second one. Next up, we've got the Blockbuster legendary grenade, with the guaranteed crit Jakobs throwing knives being all the rage for your Ordinance slot for a lot of people and a lot of builds. A lot of the fun legendary Ordinance in this game has been a bit swept under the rug. This one is one of my personal favorites that I'm sure could be made insane with a proper grenade focus setup, perhaps one using one of the legendary class mods for Rafa that does affect grenades specifically. And the reason is that this is just a high damage grenade with a really solid legendary effect, which is that it splits both into Merv grenades when it impact explodes, but then also all of the grenades will then bounce. The original grenade, all of the Mervs as well, mine rolled with nuke for extra damage and radius, and the radius is absolutely immense. It's almost dangerous to myself, but you can theoretically roll this with plenty of different grenade modifiers, and this is a pretty fun bit of Ordinance as a result. To get this for yourself then, it is a dedicated drop from Vile Lictor, who is the main story boss of the Terminus Range region. Moving on, don't take this entry too seriously. This is an obscure weapon, and I wanted to include it just because it's really silly and fun, honestly, but I do not at all want to imply that this thing specifically is like an actually good weapon that I think that people want to use and would help you in your actual time playing the game. That said, this is Sideshow. This is a funky TDR legendary pistol, and when you reload it, you throw the gun and start a full-on mini-game. If you can shoot the gun before it impacts with terrain or with an enemy, it will bounce back into the air, and you will gain 2 pistol ammo. Shoot it again, same things happen, and it does explode when a bullet hits it, so technically speaking, if you have a bit of splash radius, you can make this do explosive damage to enemies repeatedly if you are accurate with it. But it's a very roundabout way of doing that. Basically, it's a gun that has a keepy uppy activity attached to it for no real actual power value, more so just fun. I mean, sure, you could make it build around the explosive damage when you hit it midair, but I just think it's a silly weapon that's fun to play with when you're sitting around in a town or just hanging around with your friends in co-op more than anything else. That said, if you do want one of these for yourself, it is a dedicated drop from the Divisioner boss, who is inside of this Order bunker on the east side of the Terminus Range region. After that, we've got Divided Focus. This is a legendary weapon that has a pretty defined effect. It fires out piercing shots that also bounce off of terrain. The main place that I can see this excelling is in really tight spaces where the orbs can just infinitely hit the same target due to the angle of the walls and stuff, both piercing through them and then bouncing back into them and piercing through them over and over and over. There aren't many places like that for important bosses at least, but I could definitely see someone making this quite strong in the right scenario, especially combined with the fact that it can spawn with the Jakobs accessory for ricochets on crits, and when this effect ricochets, the ricocheted shot is also a piercing bouncing orb. So you basically multiply it by hitting the head, you create a second one, and then they just keep bouncing and keep piercing. So there's absolutely a world in which this could be turned into a very strong weapon in a tight space. As for where to get this one specifically, if you do want it for yourself, this is a dedicated drop from the Core Observer boss, who is in the Order bunker, located here around the western side of the Fade Fields region. Second to last then, we have a pretty pretty underrated build boosting piece and weapon in general, which is Whiskey Foxtrot. This legendary weapon is high damage per bullet, high fire rate in theory, but by default, it is a burst fire weapon. It only fires 3 bullets in a row at a time. This sort of makes the fast fire rate not that helpful, but it can spawn with the Ripper attachment, which gets you to charge up, before then firing at the full fire rate as a full auto weapon, which then makes it one of the fastest firing assault rifles in the game. On top of the secondary legendary effect, which is a special underbarrel attachment, and this can roll as one of 2 things. One of them is the ability to turn the weapon full auto as an alternate fire mode, and while that does solve the main negative of the weapon without the need for the Ripper part roll, that version would mean that you can't get the underbarrel shotgun. The ideal version of this then is Ripper charge, so you can get to full auto, but with this underbarrel shotgun, which applies a damage amping debuff to enemies that it hits for a few seconds afterwards, meaning that if you shoot an enemy with this underbarrel, they then take more damage from you from all sources, even like you can melee and get more damage from your melees after you hit with the shotgun, and you can then just use this as your main weapon in itself if you scale off of fire rate, or you can just use it to boost the power of other builds and make weapons that may not be quite as strong feel as strong as the really busted ones. As for how to get this, it is a dedicated drop from Directive O, who is the boss in this specific order bunker here inside of Dominion City itself on the eastern side of the region. Finally then, let's talk about Plasma Coil, a renowned legendary SMG that was one of the strongest possible options in Borderlands 3. It returns now in Borderlands 4, and I've heard very little chatter about it, but it is still incredibly strong. I had this thing by pure randomness drop for me twice at different times during my first story playthrough, and it carried me for the next 10 levels both times. The main thing that this does is fire slow-moving but high-damage elemental projectile orbs, and the negative of that can be avoided if you just walk right up into the enemy's business and fire this a foot from their face, so it all instantly connects for a load of damage without worrying about the projectile speed. It's just a really solid weapon in general, nothing secretive past that honestly, but it just has not been talked about that much. As for how to get this one for yourself, it is a dedicated drop from the Timekeeper, you know, the main bad guy of the main story, so you can only really go out of your way to get this and to farm it if you've already finished the campaign. Otherwise, you just gotta rely on random world drops like pretty much everything else. That just about does it for today then, everyone. 10 obscure legendaries as of this early stage on in Borderlands 4, some of which I think are being hard slept on for their actual power potential, others I just think are fun and worth talking about and knowing about. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and if you think there are any other cool legendaries flying under the radar, let us know in the comments down below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe with the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, I'm the conductor of the poop train! Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.